Today we'll be going through Genesis chapter 16. Chapter 16 is a very beautiful story, a very interesting one. Hagar, it's mostly about Hagar, one of the girls that came from Egypt at the time when Abraham went to Egypt with, if you missed out on an episode, I think it was episode 13. Yes, you'll have more details there. So Hagar was one of Sarai's Egyptian maid-servants, whom the king of Egypt, or rather Pharaoh, bestowed upon Abraham in chapter 12. I think, it was episode 12. Chapter 12, verse 16. And is the person mostly concerned in the story that we're going to be telling today, here in chapter 16. Amen? So here in this chapter, we have about 4 things that we need to be concerned about, and especially these 4 things are mostly about Hagar, the slave girl from Egypt. One is about her marriage to her master Abraham. We'll find that in verses 1 to 3. And 2, it's about her misbehavior towards Sarai, her mistress. We'll find that in verses 4 to 6 as we read down there. And then we'll also have her discourse with the angel as she was trying to run away. And then she met this angel in the desert. We'll find that, I think, in chapter 7 to 14. And then finally, she becomes pregnant and she delivers a boy, a young boy called Ishmael. Literally, this was Abraham's first boy. We'll find that in verses 15 and 16. Now, you need to understand that for very many years, Abraham resisted following the practices of his days. Abraham and Sarah are very wealthy. You need to understand that these guys were really rich. Abraham had very many servants in his own compound. A couple of chapters back, we saw how he, in his own compound, commanded over 318 soldiers out of his own servants to go and attack a confederation of 4 kings. So he actually had very many servants in his own compound. Abraham could have married, or he could have actually taken some of these servants for his own concubines, if he so desired, because, well, he could afford that. Amen? But he chose to wait on God to fulfill the promise of the child through his barren wife, Sarai. He didn't want to make a decision that was against God's will. Now, right now, he's in around, Abraham is in his mid-80s. To be precise, he's about 85 years old. And Sarai is about, 75 years? Yeah, give or take. And it seems to be like Sarai is now becoming tired of waiting. She decides, hey, man, we've been waiting. She started waiting when they left Haran. At the time, Abraham was about 75 years old. Not before then. Right before then, when they came right from Babylon. They've been together for probably over 40 years, and she's been barren. But let's say from the time the promise of God came to him, we are looking at about 10 to 15 years, give or take. So she's been waiting, and she's tired. Out of her tiredness, she decides to activate Plan B. Which is Plan B? Plan B is to get her maid servant, give her to Abraham, her husband, that she may sleep with Abraham, and through her she may get a son. That was Sarai's Plan B. Apparently, if a wife back in the, back then in the times of, not only just his times, I think even in African society we had that till about what? I think the last generation. If a wife was unable to give birth, or if she was barren, or if maybe she gave birth to children, but she got into menopause, and the man still wanted kids, she had the right to bestow her own maid unto the husband. In doing so, the husband then would produce a kid out of that servant. But whatever children she gets, or whatever children the servant produces, they actually all belong to the master or to the mistress. So at this point, she activates that plan. She gets Hagar. She decides to give Hagar to Abraham for a wife. For primary objective was that they may have a son, whom then will be a son to Sarai. Of course, Abraham doesn't say no to Sarai's plan B. He moves along with it. He accepts. He takes on Hagar, and very quickly, Hagar becomes pregnant. And right immediately she's pregnant, she then becomes elevated from slave to wife. Yeah? And then as soon as she's elevated from slave to wife, immediately she starts treating her mistress Sarai with contempt. Perhaps Hagar resented the idea that her child would belong to Sarai. She sort of resented that idea. She thought, well, if I get my own kid out of Abraham, when the hell would I give why would I give the kid back to Sarai? And you remember back in this culture, the culture we're looking at here now, if a woman did not be able to, give birth to children, boy, it was a very disgraceful thing. She could be disrespected. In fact, it's not only just them, it's the same thing that happens also here in African society. Amen? Yeah. So she becomes resentful, and, Sarah's feelings about her plan changed, and she makes it very clear to Abraham that she holds him responsible for this conflict. And she demands that he make clear that Sarai remains authority over Hagar. Amen? Amen. Again, Abraham doesn't say no. He agrees to the same terms and conditions. With that approval, Hagar's handed over back to the authority of her mistress Sarai, but unfortunately Sarai deals harshly with Hagar. So harshly that Hagar runs off into the wilderness alone. Maybe she was so scared. Maybe she did so out of the fearful for her life. She probably thought her life would be taken out eventually. As she's running in the wilderness, she's probably heading back where? To Egypt, where she came from. She hits and she decides, to go along. There was a spring, and then she decides to go and have a rest on that spring along the road leading back to her homeland in Egypt. While she was there, the Bible speaks about an angel of the Lord appearing to her and speaking to her. And this angel, of course, tells her, hey, Sarai, you've got to submit yourself to your mistress. In fact, you've got to go back and, and be submissive. But if you go back, this is what is going to happen. You're going to have a son. That young man, you're going to call him Ishmael. And then he says so many other things. His offsprings will become so numerous as to be uncountable. Almost the same promise as God gave Abraham. However, he will be a wild donkey. He continues by saying he'll be a wild donkey. A man for his life and the lives of his descendants. Now, will be sort of marked by conflict. This is what exactly is telling him, marked by conflict with everyone. And then, of course, the other things which we're going to be looking down there. Then eventually, Sarai returns home. She returns to her master, Abram, and her mistress, Sarai. And Ishmael eventually is born. And then he's named Ishmael. And then we'll see. I think it stops here. That's just a review of chapter 16. Amen? Amen. All right.